Hi guys, what's up? Today we're going to start the next topic in the pharmacology, and that's mode of transport of drugs across the membrane, right? So without any ado, let's start. So let me make the columns here. So this is your first column, and this is your second column, and this is your third column. Now in these three different columns, I'm going to make the different types of transport, different systems, right? So let's make a membrane here. This is your membrane, this is your next membrane, and this is your next membrane. Now let me draw a drug. First of all, let me draw a drug because we're talking about the drug. This is your drug. For the drug to get transported across this membrane, we need a drug. So this is your drug, a carrier, a transporter, whatever you call it. For this drug to get transported across the membrane, let me make the membrane a bit farther. This is your membrane. So for the drug to get transported across the membrane, you need a truck, and the truck is driven by a source of fuel, and that's ATP, right? So this is your first system in which the drug is carried by the carrier or the truck, and the truck is fueled by ATP. Now let's make another system. This is your drug, and this drug is carried by a truck. This is your truck. And this drug, to be driven to another side of the membrane, it doesn't need any ATP. It gets transported on its own. Now, let's make another system. This system means this drug gets transported to across the membrane without any truck, without any ATP. So, basically there are three systems. One system requires carrier and the ATP source of fuel to get transported across the membrane, and this system requires a truck or the carrier or the transporter, whatever you call it, for the drug to get transported across the membrane. And this system is very much ideal, huh? Because this doesn't need any truck and it doesn't need any fuel. Well, I'm sorry, I forgot to draw the wheels of the truck. Anyways, so now these are three different systems. So let's name it. The system that requires a truck or the carrier and the energy source, the ATP, is called active transport. Active transport, right? And the system which requires the truck or the carrier or the transporter and not the ATP. So we call it facilitated diffusion. Diffusion. Because this isn't facilitated by the carrier, so it's called facilitated diffusion. And this system has been using the fuel, so this is active. The fuel source, the ATP, is actively transporting it, so it's active transport. And this system doesn't require any carrier and any source of energy, so this is passive diffusion. This is passive diffusion. You get it? Now, let's summarize these three systems in a different table. So let me use the next color marker to make it more exciting for you guys. So, I want to use so this is your table. So let me write the passive diffusion first. Passive and facilitated diffusion and active transport. And active transport, alright? So the first question is, do we need carrier? The next question is it saturable? The next question is, do we need energy? Alright, so let's get into the first passive diffusion system. So does a passive diffusion require carrier? No, not at all, because it has no any truck or transport, so we don't need any carrier. So when there is no any carrier used, so let me get into this active transport to make you understand this saturable thing. So here's only one truck, right? So whenever one drug comes, it can get transported easily because it has a truck and the truck can carry the truck. But what if the next drug comes here? What if the next drug comes? The drug doesn't have any carrier or truck to get transported to the next side. So the transporter or the truck that was present here that has been already saturated, so it cannot be transported through the membrane. This means the transporter which was present here had already been saturated, right? So in active transport, there's a limited amount of carrier, so the carrier can get saturated. So this system is saturable, but you can see here in passive diffusion there is no any carrier. So whatever amount of drug comes here, there's no any limitation. It can get transported to the membrane, right? So the question here is saturable. The passive diffusion is not saturable. I'm sorry. So this is, let me use the same color here. This is not saturable. Now, is it energy? Does it require energy? No, not at all. This doesn't require energy. This doesn't require any carrier. This doesn't require any energy, and this doesn't. This is not saturable. So ideal system is this. Now let's get into the facilitated diffusion. So does facilitated diffusion require transport or carrier or the truck? Yes, of course, it requires. Now the next question is, if it uses the carrier, then is it saturable? What if the next drug comes? The drug doesn't have any place to sit and go across the membrane. So the transporter that was present here, available here, has already been saturated. This means the system is saturable, right? The drug cannot pass because the system or the drug that was available has already been saturated. So let's write here, the system is saturable. Now, does this require energy? No, it doesn't require any energy, so no energy required. Now let's get into the active transport. So does the active transport require carrier? Yes, of course, it requires this carrier. So we write here, yes. Now, saturable, it is saturable. I already described it. Whenever the next drug comes that surpasses the number of the transporter, that means the system has already been saturated because the transporter available has already been used up. So it is saturable. I'm focusing on this saturable thing very much because it's very, very high yielded step 1 USML. Right? So now the next question is, does it require energy? Yes, of course. I can see here that the truck has been fueled by this ATP. Right? So this system requires energy. Now you can see here the system which uses this carrier that is saturable, right? Which doesn't require any carrier. They're not saturable. That doesn't require energy, and first of all, in the first place, it doesn't require any carrier. That's why they're not saturable, and that doesn't require energy. Now, let's suppose in the question they may ask you the mode of transport of a drug. So if they ask you the question, then how do you do it? How do you get to the answer? For this, let me draw a chart. So whenever they ask the mode of transport of a drug, first the question you have to ask yourself is its saturable system. If the system is saturable, yes and no. First of all, let's talk about if the system is not saturable. If the system is not saturable, that's easy. That is passive diffusion, as I already described it by the table and the figures. Now, if the system is saturable, then we have two options. That can be either that can be the systems that use the carriers, right? So here is now two options we have, but to find out which is the system they're talking about, then we have to answer the next question, that is, does it require energy? Does it require energy? If it requires energy, then that is active transport. And if that does not require any energy, that's facilitated diffusion. Okay, so first the question we have to ask is the system is saturable or not. If the system is not saturable, you write that passive diffusion. And if the system is saturable, then we have got two options to figure out which the system they're talking about is. Let's ask next question, that is, does it require energy? And if the system doesn't require any energy, that's facilitated diffusion. And if the system requires energy, and that's active transport, right? So one point that before closing this lecture is passive diffusion that occurs the concentration gradient, and this facilitated diffusion, this also occurs across the concentration gradient. But this active transport, since it uses the source of energy, that's ATP, so it occurs against the concentration gradient because it uses energy. That's it. So this is for this lecture. We're going to talk about next topic in the next video. So hopefully you understood the things that I wanted to convey. So we'll meet in the next lecture. Thank you.